Hi there, my name is John Stevens, pastor of Zion Lutheran Church in Oregon City, Oregon, and we're part of the ELCA, and welcome to Dollar Store Children's Sermons, where we take an item from the Dollar Tree and we tie them to the lectionary text. This is for the narrative lectionary, where it's the 23rd Sunday after Pentecost, and we're looking at 2 Samuel, chapter 7, verses 1 to 17. And these last couple of narrative lectionary texts have really been difficult for me to figure out a children's sermon for, and tie it around. And this text is no different, but this is the direction I'm going with this, and I hope it can be a springboard for your own thinking. And we're dealing here with the house, where God lives. And in the text, God mentioning that God lives in the ark and has been moving and has been fluid and has been going with the people, and that not having a specific place where the cedar-built house where God lives there. And it's an interesting thing, because when we're in church, there's many times we refer to church as the house of God. This is God's house, and somehow that God lives in this place and God doesn't live anywhere else. And so the item I'm using from the Dollar Tree is actually, it can be any deck of cards. I'm using a large deck of cards, a jumbo playing cards. This just happened to be from the Lion King or something like that. They call it the Lion Guard. But the idea that I'm using is that as I'm talking about, I'm going to ask the question, I wonder where God lives. We hear in Scripture passage, and what I'm doing here is creating a house of cards. Creating a house of cards as I'm talking, sorry about that wiggling there, as I'm talking, to create a house of cards. I don't care if it falls down, but that as we talk, we can build this house of cards and talk, asking the question, I wonder where God lives. And the text tells us that we try to make God live in a particular place and all that, but that's not the case. God lives everywhere. God is found everywhere. Now, it's helpful to have church, because it gives us a place to gather and to focus and to see, to pay attention for us. But you see, this is all for us and not for God. God doesn't live in this house. God lives everywhere. God lives in our hearts. God lives in our neighbor. God lives everywhere. And when we look around, we can see God everywhere. And I love in this text where it says, "Are you the one to build me a house to dwell in?" I love some of this imagery that God just puts out this. Don't you realize it's ridiculous for you to build this house to where that's where I will live? I will be everywhere. I never asked you to build me a house, and it's just a wonderful image. I like it. And so asking that question, where does God live? I'm reminded of a story from my nephew, Zach, who's now in college. And when Zach was at the doctor and with his mom, and they were listening to his heart, Zach asked the doctor, "Can you hear Jesus?" And the doctor laughs and was like, "No, but why?" And he goes, "Because that's where Jesus lives in my heart, and that's where, can't you hear him?" And I just love that image. It's a wonderful thing, because we use those imageries that God lives in our heart. God lives. People say, "Oh, I don't need to go to church because I can just go to the mountaintop and I can see God there." And that's true. You can see God there. God is everywhere. But one of the reasons we come to these places, we come to the sanctuary, we come to church, is it gives us a place to focus, and it is all for us, and I believe God knows that. So anyway, that's the direction that I'm going with this, is in this house of cards. No reference to the Netflix series or anything like that. No reference to the political landscape of the time, but just building a house of cards, and they keep falling down on me. That ultimately that God's love and God's presence will stand the test of time beyond any building, any house, anything like that. And it's especially important when we look at the people being sent to exile, that God still is with them. Their God walks with them. All right, that's what I got. That's the the springboard for this week's children's sermon. I hope you can use it. I hope it's a springboard, and that's what I'm doing. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope you have a blessed and fantastic week.